Hi, welcome to Hill & Ponton's live Q&A. I'm attorney Shannon Brewer, and I am here today to answer your questions. So let's get started. Our first question is from Larry Price. Filed an intent to file in June 2024. The claim was submitted June 2025, same day. Claim approved with effective date of June 28th, 2025. What should be the effective date be? Whose error, the RO or mine? Was I a day late? What would be the M21 CFR reference? So I don't know the M21 reference off the top of my head, but it's 1 year from the date of the intent to file. I would say you're correct that it's the 28th because the day of the ITF doesn't count. The next day is when you start counting. So you are correct, and I would appeal that decision. Okay, this next question is from Yolanda Fruge Adams. 1 of 7. On August 27th, filed 2023, the board granted service connection for bilateral MTSS, osteoarthritis for the left knee, and for lumbar back stated as back condition. On September 8th, the RO rated bilateral MTSS 0% with effective date 12/20. Okay. Lumbar strain with degenerative arthritis claimed as degenerative disc disease, and spinal stenosis 10% effective September 2019. Bilateral sciatica 20% effective April 2023. Left knee 10% effective December 2020. Do I go supplemental or do I have to go back to the board? Go back to slide 1 for me. I know we've got more parts of this question, but I just want to look at, okay. The board granted service connection. Okay, now go back for me. Okay, so the board granted those things, and then I'm assuming it went back to the regional office to implement that grant, and this is what they gave you, these percentages and these effective dates. Do I go supplemental or do I have to go back to the board? You do not have to go back to the board. You can file a supplemental claim. The ratings and the effective dates are downstream issues from the service connection issue. So the board decided service connection, the regional office decided the effective date and the percentage. So you can just appeal that. Okay, the next part of the question, RO sciatica rating did not account for nerve damage and loss of function secondary to back. Which date would rule? Let's see, April or 2020 or 2019. The RO claims the effective date is when the C&P exam was done. They're not correct about that unless the C&P exam was the first place the sciatica showed up. If you never complained about it and it's not in your medical records, it might be hard to prove that you were having that problem before the C&P exam. So you would want to look and see if that's in your medical records as far as the effective date. So the C&P exam effective date is not correct. Okay, next part. Bilateral sciatica should be 60% left, 40% right. I also have claimed for thoracic back. Does the board decision help that claim since decision started as back condition? So the thoracic and the lumbar spine are on the same diagnostic code. So that you're probably only going to get one rating for that. You're not going to get a separate rating for the thoracic spine and the lumbar spine. You can get a separate rating for the cervical spine, but thoracic and lumbar are one rating. Okay, let's see here. And interestingly, the board stated, while the AOJ said no new and relevant evidence, proceeded to re-adjudicate the claim. Board finds AOJ may, I'm trying to do a better job on these of explaining what our acronyms mean. So AOJ is the agency of original jurisdiction. So that would be the regional office. The board finds the AOJ made implied finding of new and relevant evidence. The board is bound by those favorable findings. Lastly, is it common for the RO to tie as many conditions to your 100% PTSD to avoid half step? And how do I fight it, or should I? Example, the VA did diabetes secondary to PTSD weight, but it is actually secondary to ITP meds, 150 milligrams. Prednisone per day. Sorry so long. Look forward to Tuesdays because of you guys. Follow up to your answer to July question. ITP can affect all organs. Thank you for all you do. Should have filed all in 2019. Go back to slide 6 for me. Is it common for the RO to tie as many conditions to your PTSD? I wouldn't say that's common, and I wouldn't say that's probably, to be honest, that's probably not why they did it. They probably just messed that up. And so you can just appeal that as far as what it's secondary to, if it's going to do anything for you. If you're actually trying to, stack these things and get special monthly compensation and things like that, then it might matter whether they're connected to the right things or not. If you're just going for 100% and you're done, I probably wouldn't appeal that, because it doesn't really matter in that case what it's secondary to. So go back to 7. Did that answer that question? I think it did. Okay, so I think we're through with that question. Next person. Okay, let's see. Same one. RO also sent letters saying it was Q that they paid me SMC-S to December 24. Chances of them waiving. You can appeal that. I don't know whether it was Q or not. The clear and unmistakable error, if you didn't have one condition that was 100% and others that added up to 60 or more, then it was Q. If you did though, or if you were housebound during that period, then possibly they've made a mistake and it's worth appealing. I would try to appeal it if they're wrong, but if they accidentally paid you for something you weren't supposed to get, they're probably not going to waive that unless you can show a financial hardship. Okay, this question is from Another Step, part 1 of 2. I am service connected for sleep apnea and have been using a CPAP machine, that's a continuous positive airway pressure machine, since 2013. The CPAP does not always work for me and I am still having trouble sleeping. The VA knows this but offers nothing new. What are my options? Can I use other devices and still retain my service connection? My CPAP reports usage hours to the sleep clinic. Open to suggestions. Thank you. So any kind of continuous positive airway pressure is going to be enough to satisfy the current rating schedule. Now they are looking at changing that. So, be aware that there are going to be rating schedule changes for sleep apnea. But at this point, you don't have to be, per the diagnostic code, you don't have to be using the CPAP machine to need it. So what the regulation requires is that you are prescribed one, that you need one to treat your condition. You've been prescribed one, so you need one. That's all you have to show. Not using it because it's not working, because it's not working is actually something that's under the new rating code that may actually be in your favor, that it's not working for you. So you don't have to be using it. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be effective for you in order to have been diagnosed and be prescribed one. So you can still use pretty much any other device that's a positive airway pressure. And I really think the new ones like Inspire and things like that, I think those are going to be the same issue. I think those are still going to be a 50% under this current rating schedule. I don't know that for a fact, but I believe that is correct. So I would do what you need to do for your treatment. The fact that you were prescribed one and it didn't work well still, in my opinion, entitles you to the 50% rating. Okay, this question is from Alan. If you are service connected for hemorrhoids at 0% and you apply for a higher rating, will you be granted? If you have a positive CMP and then a negative CMP, what happens? So if you meet the criteria for a higher rating, yes, they'll grant the higher rating when you file for an increase. If you had a positive and a negative CMP exam, that's kind of a balance of evidence. It's a wash. I might, in that case, get my own doctor to give an opinion, your treating doctor, and that would push it over into the most of the evidence is in your favor, so it's more than 50-50. But usually if there's a positive and then a negative, they're looking to overrule that positive. They didn't like the positive, so they went and got themselves another opinion, which they're not supposed to do, but they do. And so what I would do is try to push it over into there's more favorable evidence than negative by getting another opinion of my own, by getting my doctor to do an opinion. Okay, this next question is from JRH. Hello, during last week's live, I mentioned that I filed loss of use of hands claim that went from step 1 to 5 in a week with no CMP exam. I received a decision letter granting my SMC-M and a half. The VA incorrectly calculated my half steps. They only gave me one half step for depressive disorder 70% and IBD 60%. I filed a direct review waiving evidence period. How long do these cases usually take? So for a board direct review, I'm currently seeing still a couple of years, unless you are over 75, in which case you can expedite. And those I'm seeing more like months, and not very many months. Once you hit 75, they're moving pretty quickly on those. But if you are under 75, you could be looking at a couple of years on that. Also, I have an HLR claim to increase my sleep apnea from 30 to 50% as I have a CPAP machine. If awarded 50%, will this be factored into my direct review case for an additional half step? Yes, it will be. It will be, even though you can't give new evidence in a direct appeal, they do have to consider, procedurally something that takes your rating up during the appeal period. So yes, they do have to consider that and factor it in. Okay, this next question is from DK Guns 718. Hello, thank you for your videos. I just got granted sleep apnea on a supplemental claim last week, which put me 100% permanent and total. I have 3 pending old claims, now all non-secondaries. Can these claims open a review into my new 100% and somehow mess up the rating? Should I withdraw to be safe? So technically, they are not going to, if they are not part of the same issue, if they're not related to the issue you were granted 100% for, they shouldn't affect it. That being said, anytime the VA is in your file, they have the ability to look at anything they want to. If these ratings have a chance to give you a higher rating, or if they have a chance to give you an earlier effective date because they are pending prior to your 100%, I would probably let them play out. If not, I would close them. So it's just a matter, they're probably not going to hurt you. So it's probably okay to let them play out. But if you don't need them anyway, I would close them out. Just keep, they always use the term poke the bear. There's no reason to do that unless there's a potential for it to actually increase your rating or give you an earlier effective date. So that's how I would answer that. Okay, this question's from Constitutional Immunity 2.0. I know a guy. 10% service connected for back strain 2012, 0% for back injury. I'm not sure what MH is. He fought hard for the past 13 years and got up to 60% for his back and radiculopathy. During COVID, he tried to get an MRI due to weakness. Last year, he got a VA request for CMP and X-ray and got knocked down to 0%. He appealed with the VSO and got back to 40%, hired a lawyer, got another MRI, got 90% for a combination of back, knees, cervical, but 0% mental health. I think that's mental health. Is there a question? Okay. That's the whole thing. I'm not sure what the question is. That's really unfortunate. I hope that with the appeals with the VSO that they did get him 40% all the way back, that the reduction was overturned, because that's what I would go for. Oh, let's see. Here we go. Now's another part. Now at HLR, what was sad when they took away his 60% to 0, they said he had scoliosis. He doesn't have. He went through 7 jobs in 12 years. Mental health is real, back injury, but keeps getting denied. Why? So I think what you're asking me is, why are they denying mental health secondary to the back injury? And I couldn't tell you. If they don't feel like it's related somehow. He probably wants to talk to his mental health professional, whoever's treating him for depression, and have them state that they feel like it's due to the back issue, and it could be due to the back issue and other issues, but somebody needs to say that it's due to the back injury for VA to grant it. Just they're not going to make that connection unless a medical professional makes that connection. So your friend needs to do that for them, or have his doctor do that for them. Okay, this question is from Debbie Gillette. Brother filed for OCD, IBS, I think obsessive compulsive disorder, irritable bowel syndrome, and GERD, which is gastroesophageal reflux disease, in December 2024, and rated 70% for OCD. IBS and GERD were denied. Can he appeal and file IBS as secondary to OCD, as there is a lot of medical evidence to support it? Absolutely. And I would do that. You can change your theory of what caused a disability. You're not a doctor. The veteran is not considered to be a medical expert. So you're not going to be held to, well, I said it was due to this condition, but it's actually due to that condition. You can change that in the middle of your appeal, and that is not a problem. Absolutely, that's what I would do. Okay, this question is for Rico Mai. BVA direct review remand for psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis on August 5th, 2025. The judge instructed the RO to provide a medical opinion based on all total exposure from my military deployments in the Red Sea. I have the 1117 and 1119 memos. My TERA memo initially only had the 1119 memo notated. It has been updated to now include 1117 with the Southwest Asia Medal and 2 6-month Red Sea deployments. The VA has conceded my exposure. I have an onset date in service with skin rashes and current diagnosis for both conditions. My denial letter said the etiology was unknown or not fully known. Provide an opinion as to if it is at least as likely as not, likelihood at least approximately balanced or nearly equal, if not higher, that the vet's psoriasis had its onset during service. What are my chances of getting it granted? I think they're good. I think what you have to understand is the Gulf War, we used to call it Gulf War syndrome. Now we're calling it medically unexplained multi-symptom illnesses. No matter what you call it, nobody really understands exactly what caused these problems. So it becomes really difficult because the VA is wanting you to, they want you to prove something that we don't know what chemicals people were exposed to. We don't know what was in those burn pits. We don't know, what caused what, really. It's kind of an amalgamation of exposures. And so it's very hard to prove I was exposed to this, it caused this, which is the usual way VA does things. So these kind of issues get really difficult. And a lot of times the raters don't know exactly what they're looking at or what they're supposed to do with it. So sometimes I recommend taking these to the board just because the toxic exposure issues are easier for them. Make sure you've got a really good medical opinion. Make sure, that you kind of have lined out, this is, that it is medically unexplained. And it sounds like they've already acknowledged that. They said the etiology is unexplained or not fully explained. So you just need a doctor to say that even though they don't know what exactly caused it, it was more likely than not that it was your service there. So that's, I would definitely appeal that and keep going with that. I think you have a good shot there. Okay, this next question is from Farm. Hello, I've been diagnosed with moderate sleep apnea where I now have to use a CPAP machine. After looking further, as contributing factors, it appears chronic sinusitis and allergic rhinitis can cause sleep apnea. Do I file a claim? So it depends. What you're saying here is that the sinusitis and rhinitis can cause sleep apnea, not the other way around. So the sleep apnea is the secondary condition, and okay, let's see here. So you're not service connected for the sleep apnea. Never mind. I misunderstood your question. If you are service connected for the sinusitis and rhinitis, yes, file a claim for the sleep apnea secondary to those conditions. And I know that we have been successful with that sometimes. It may take an appeal. It may take a medical opinion because a lot of times VA does treat sleep apnea claims. They look at it as weight is the only thing that causes it. It feels like sometimes. And so sometimes you get an automatic no, but that is definitely a valid claim. If you're service connected for the sinusitis and the rhinitis, get your doctor to say that they feel like the sleep apnea is caused by that or aggravated by that, and then file that claim, yes. Okay, this next question is from Jim Huber. Coworker's husband, 100% permanent and total with TBI. I told her to file for aid and attendance and caregiver. Told her to message the doctor and ask for help with this process. Who does she need to contact about caregiver? Do intent to file, next steps. Yes, file an intent to file. That's going to protect your effective date until you're ready and know what you want to do here. She absolutely can. Aid and attendance, it's a VA form 2680. You can take it to your treating doctor and have them fill it out. Make sure they fill it out with thinking of the service-connected conditions, particularly the TBI, because TBI has sort of a special monthly compensation associated with it. If you need aid and attendance due to a TBI, you might be able to qualify for SMC-T, which is the highest level of compensation. And so have the doctor that's treating for the mental issues and the headaches and the TBI related issues fill that out. And you can just submit that with a claim to the VA. Now, as far as caregiver, that's through the healthcare system, not the Veterans Benefits system. So VA has two arms. Veterans Benefits is what we generally work in. That's where the compensation claims, the service-connected conditions. VHA is the Veterans Health Administration. That's where you're getting your treatment. They have a separate program. It is not handled by VBA. That's where caregiver is. So you're going to want to deal with that through the doctors and through the healthcare system. Okay, this next question is from Cassius Williams. Good day. I have a question about clear and unmistakable error because I may have one. I was given a 0% for hypertension at a BDD claim. My service medical record indicated that I had multiple readings for hypertension. Would it be a cue that they gave me a 0% rating while I should have received a 10% rating? I'm planning on filing a cue and an earlier effective date for the error. I felt that I should have been rated 10% on the BDD claim. Would this also be a date entitlement aroused also? So I don't know what your readings were at that time, what your hypertension readings were, or if you were taking medication for it. If all the evidence in your service medical record supports the 10%, then yes, that would be Q, because they should have rated you on the evidence that was in the file. So I would file that. Now, clear and unmistakable Q errors are hard. You know, you can only use the evidence that the VA had in front of them. They can't be expected to have known things that weren't in the file or to have evidence that they just didn't have. So everything has to have been documented supporting the 10% in the record. If not, then it wouldn't be Q. Okay. Next question's from Grace Smith. QTC letter appointment designated as IMO eligible clinician will review existing records and a medical provider will review the referral for my claim to complete DBQ. Let's see, I'm not sure. QTC letter appointment. So they're just going to do a records review and you don't actually have to go in and be examined for this. And that's pretty common. You know, if they feel like if you have a condition that's well documented and they're just trying to figure out, could it be related to your exposures or something like that, then it's pretty common for them to just do a medical opinion. What's next? Basically, you're just waiting for that medical opinion. And then once that's in the file, they should go ahead and make a decision on your case as long as that they feel like that medical opinion is adequate and based on the evidence. If you feel like you have other evidence that you want to submit, though, this is a great time to do it. They're not going to make a decision until they get that medical opinion. So if you have something else to give them, absolutely do it now. Thanks for what you do. HOC Family TV. Hi, what can we do when a CMP doctor says migraines have no nexus to anxiety, but we know there is a nexus? My recommendation is, first of all, you know, you can go online and you can do some research on it and see what you can find there. And then talk to your doctors. Talk to your doctors that are treating you for migraines. Talk to your doctors that are treating you for anxiety, and get them to write a letter. Or if they won't do that, get them to put it in your medical records, because that's good enough. They don't have to write a very detailed letter saying something to get this started. C&P doctors, just because they are working on a case for the VA doesn't mean that they're right. So you can have your own doctors give an opinion on this. You can use the medical articles that you can find, and you can submit them, but VA is not going to grant based just on that, because those aren't specific to your case. You want something specific to your case. So you can take those articles, show them to your doctor, ask your doctor, what do you think? Is this what's going on with me? And get them to put that in your records or write you a letter and say that your migraines are more likely than not related to, or aggravated by, made worse by, caused by your anxiety. That's what I would do. Okay, this question is from Mickadoodle. Hi, I'm SMC N.5 without ANA. Do you take cases for just increasing benefits? We do. Yeah. If there's something we feel like we can do to help you, you're absolutely welcome to give us a call, and we can take a look and see if there's anything we can do. Okay, this question is from IB King. Finally got TDIU, that's total disability based on individual unemployability. Permanent and total after fighting for 4 years. Congratulations. I have a C&P coming up for my back and plantar. Should I attend? Thanks, Carol. You and your team got me over the hump. Carol has helped a lot of people and get them over the hump. She's great with these questions. So if you have the C&P exam, if you need those, if you need your back and the plantar fasciitis or the plantar, the foot problem, if you need those to be added, if they're going to benefit you in some way, if you're trying to get something more than TDIU, or if they go back before your TDIU claim and so they might get you an earlier effective date, then yes, go to those exams. I almost always suggest you go to your exams when they're scheduled. However, if you want to drop your back and your foot issue because you've already got everything you want, then you don't have to attend the C&P exams. You can send a letter to the VA and state that you are satisfied with your current benefits and that you want to withdraw any pending appeals. I don't recommend doing that if there's something that they can still do for you. If they can get you more or set you up for special monthly compensation or get you an earlier effective date. But if there's nothing more that the back and the foot can add to what you already have, you don't have to go to that exam and you don't have to continue with your appeal. You can withdraw those if you want to. Okay, this question's from RV. I got a mental health rating of 50%, even though the DBQ IMO from an outside doctor listed symptoms for me in the 70% range. I tried an HLR, but I'm still at 50%. What should my next step be? Get another DBQ and IMO for supplemental? That is one option. You either need, because you've already done the higher level review, you have two options. You can either go to the board and you can do that with just the evidence you have, and you can argue that your symptoms that were listed support a 70%. That unless you're over 75, like I said earlier, that is going to take a couple of years probably. So, you have to be prepared for that wait, but that is one option. Your other option though, and it is the quicker option, is to get more evidence. It could be a statement from you. It doesn't have to be a DBQ and an IMO. It could be a statement from you explaining what your symptoms are and that they support the 70% rating. It can be medical records showing that your symptoms are higher than what they're saying. It can be a letter from your doctor. It can be a DBQ. You can submit any new evidence and file a supplemental appeal with that. And the supplemental appeals are going much quicker. They're going to be more like months rather than years to get a decision generally. Okay, this question is from St. Andrews. I am 30% IBS TERA. If I file for TERA fibromyalgia, how can I avoid them pyramiding the ratings? So fibromyalgia and IBS are not going to be pyramid. Those are completely separate conditions. I imagine that you could have from fibromyalgia, you might have some gastro issues related to that, but that wouldn't be, because they're not affecting they're not the same symptoms. But pyramiding, the prohibition against that is mainly to keep you from being compensated twice for the same condition or for the same symptoms. So if you have two conditions, they cause the exact same symptoms, you're not going to get two ratings for that. So you're not, that's what they call pyramiding. But here, you can have a separate rating for IBS and fibromyalgia very easily. So I wouldn't worry about that. I don't think there's anything you need to do, just file for your fibro. Okay, this question's from Sherman Barker. I am 60% right foot fungus and currently have a supplemental claim to service connect my left foot also. Back in 2016, I have my medical records with bilateral that they missed. Can I open it back up for a backdate? Probably not. So in general, the rule is that you can only go back to the most recently filed claim. The exception to that is if there's clear and unmistakable error, like we were talking about earlier. So if I don't know what you filed for back then, if you filed a claim for bilateral feet and they only decided the right foot, you may still have a pending claim for the left foot. So in that case, yes, you could go back and you would just, I would file a supplemental claim, and then once they grant it, you can argue about the effective date. If, however, you only filed for the right foot back then and they granted the right foot and didn't do anything with the left, even if it was in the medical records, if you didn't file a claim for that, then it's not going, you can't go back. The other, if you filed for both feet and they decided both and you didn't appeal it, you also can't go back, not unless there's clear and unmistakable error. And that's a pretty high standard. If you filed for both feet and the evidence supported service connection for both, not just that you had them, but that both of them were related to service, maybe there's Q there. But that's the only way, just those things are the only ways that I can see that you could possibly go back. If this is a situation where they've denied it and you didn't appeal it, it's really hard to go back. Okay, Cerebral 1. Hello, hypothetical. If a soldier is diagnosed with mental health while actively serving in the military and honorably discharged, shouldn't they be service connected automatically? You'd think so. Shouldn't they be told they have a diagnosis before they leave service? You would think so. They should have been told they had a diagnosis. That would be odd if they weren't told that. But it's not impossible. If they didn't file a claim, they're not going to be able to get the service connection. So you have to file a claim. And I understand it's so frustrating because it sounds like here what you're saying is they weren't told they had a mental health diagnosis, so they didn't file for it. They now know they did, but if they file for it now, they're only going to be able to get the effective date as of now. You cannot get service connected before you file a claim. And that's just, that's kind of the way the regulations are written. And we're sort of bound by those at this point, unless legislation comes out that changes that. Okay, this question's from Kelly Girl. Is there ever a need to update VA 212680 ANA? So a 212680 is the VA's form to apply for aid and attendance. If I want to include a certain disability, if so, what other form do I file with that form? So there's not really a form other than the 2680 for aid and attendance. You can file a new one that's amended or updated to show that you want to include this other disability. Or once you've got a 2680 in there, if you want to add to that, you can send a letter to the VA, or you can use a form 214138 and just make a statement to include that information. You can submit medical records to show that you need help due to that condition. So you don't have to file another 2680, but you can. Okay, this question is another one from Another Step. I am service connected and receive all of my medical care from the VA. I have an eye condition that is not service connected that requires my corneas to be replaced, or I will eventually lose my eyesight. The VA has pushed this to community care. Can I expect anything from the VA in terms of special monthly compensation or other compensation if I have degraded vision? Do they have any obligation to take care of me if the surgery does not go well and my eyesight worsens, or if it just worsens naturally? Thank you. So there's VA has what's called an 1151 claim, and it's kind of like medical malpractice, but it's, VA standards. If they do something that makes your eyes worse, and it's not something, it's not the natural progression of it. If they do something that causes your condition to become worse or causes a condition, then they might be responsible for that. The way it would work is they would pay. It would sort of become a service connected condition. So you would apply for that, and the condition would be service connected. And so they would pay disability just like they would if it was something that was caused by service, if they have caused the problem. Now, if your eyesight just naturally worsens, or it doesn't fix the surgery doesn't fix the problem, that's not going to be something I don't think that VA will pay for. But if they make it worse, or they do something negligent that causes problems, then they would be responsible for that. But them just taking on the problem, if they can't fix it, they're not responsible for that. Okay, this question is from Sharon Johnson Cowart. I recently was awarded 100% for PTSD. What level of SMC do I qualify for? Is there another part of the question? No. So 100% for PTSD on its own does not qualify for special monthly compensation. That is just 100% for PTSD. If you have other conditions that add up to 60% or more, then you are eligible for SMC-S, for having one condition at 100 and others that add up to 60. The other possibility I would see here is if due to your PTSD, you are in need of someone to take care of you because you cannot handle your daily activities. So if you need someone to stay with you to make sure that you are safe, to keep you safe from your environment, then in that case, you could be awarded aid and attendance, which is special monthly compensation L. So those are the two possibilities I see. I don't know that you're entitled to either of those. 100% doesn't automatically entitle you to special monthly compensation, but if like I said, it does cause you to need additional help for aid and attendance, that would be a possibility. Okay, this question is from Rich Rod 1678. I filed a BVA appeal for earlier effective date for SMC-L. Submit 7/14/2025. Advance on the docket August 16th. Give it to a judge September 1st. Denied September 8th. Did not consider the argument inferred. Order duty to maximize. Okay. I'm not sure. Is that all the question, Nate? Okay. I'm not sure what your question is, but if you are asking, I think what you're saying is that they gave you the date for SMC-L as of the date that you filed your 2680 form, and they didn't go back to when you filed the claim, which if the condition is, SMC should be inferred. And they didn't infer, so they gave you that date. I don't know what the board said, if they said they didn't feel like you qualified for it before then, because you would have to have evidence in the record that you needed the aid and attendance prior to the date that they granted it. Just having filed the claim, while it does bring the issue up, it raises the issue, it doesn't prove the issue. So, if there's not evidence that you needed aid and attendance prior to the date that they assigned, you might not have an appeal here. However, if the evidence is all there, that would be something you could appeal to the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. Alternatively, you could do a supplemental appeal with new evidence that shows that you needed the SMC-L, that you were entitled to it. You can add additional evidence showing that there was something going on prior to the effective date that they granted that entitled you to it. So that you have a couple of different options here. Okay, question 50 plus life. First, I want to say thank you for these live events. So much information. You're so welcome. We hope that they're helpful. The question is, should I separate Cushing's disease and type 2 diabetes when I file a claim? Yes, file for both. And always the thing is, sometimes you file for a condition and other conditions are included in it, but sometimes they're not. So be as specific as you know. If you know what your different diagnoses are, file for those specifically. You can also just file for, residuals of different conditions, and you can be very generic if you don't know what your different diagnoses are. So, but if you know that you have 2 different diagnoses, file for both. Okay, this question's from Step by Step. Update on Caregiver. I appealed to BVA, and BVA granted benefits on January 7th, retroactive back to August 2018. Took until August 2025 to get paid. I had to call the VA Caregiver program and submit 2 congressionals to get it completed. Second question, submitted an attendance SMC-T supplemental claim with neurologist IMO. VA ordered CMP exams for PTSD, TBI, and all TBI residuals. So far, got back PTSD, DBQ, reference IMO. And need for aid and attendance. Will this and the caregiver approval help with approval odds of SMC-T? They could. They will be evidence in support. So, there's different standards that you have to have for each different level. Aid and attendance, there's certain things you have to prove. Caregiver, there are certain things you have to prove. SMC-T, there are certain things you have to approve. A lot of them overlap. So anything that you have for one, you can definitely submit as evidence. The other, it's not necessarily going to entitle you to the other benefit, but definitely use all of your evidence. And if it can, aid and attendance and SMC-T really do overlap. It's just a matter of what is causing you to need that aid and attendance. Okay, this question's from John Jackson. IU veteran of 1 year, 70% mental health. What is the best way to request P&T, I think, permanent and total? Or will VA award after 3 to 5 years automatically? Thanks. So there's no sort of automatic for permanent and total. But once you get to a certain age, they seem to go ahead and grant that, or once it has settled in, they do seem to go ahead and grant it. But if the evidence shows that your condition's not getting better, you can go ahead and ask for that. If you've already had it for a year and you didn't appeal it, then you may be you're not in the appeal period anymore. If you get a decision and you're still within your 1 year appeal period, you can just appeal and ask for the permanent and total. If not, you can just file a new claim, and it could be file an easy form and ask for permanent and total status. You can just file it like it's a claim. Okay, this question's from James. Can sleep apnea be claimed secondary to tinnitus and hearing loss? It can, yes. And I have seen those actually granted. Sleep apnea is a tough claim. VA does not grant those easily. They're difficult to win. So you do need a strong evidence, get your doctor to write a letter. But yes, they definitely can be claimed secondary to that. And there is a connection. Okay, this question's from Jamie Gonzalez. Claimed FSAD secondary to mental health, and that's female sexual arousal disorder, by the way, secondary to mental health and the meds. Denied due to TERA. Okay, we'll get to that. HLR'd it. Now need another female sexual arousal disorder exam and mental health. Why am I getting mental health exam when I only claimed the FSAD? Thank you. Because they are related, I'm not surprised that they're giving you both exams. They're trying to establish what the connection is and whether one causes the other. And the mental health, it is important. The mental health aspect of it and whether it's causing the secondary condition, I feel like probably they're not wrong about the mental health exam being relevant. So that doesn't surprise me that they're requesting that. Denied due to TERA is just, that's my new least favorite thing at the VA. Is the TERA has been so great. That's been, in some ways, it's a result of the PACT Act, and they're doing a lot of work trying to tell us what people were exposed to, which is great, but they're now kind of using it. They forget that not everything is related to that, and you'll file a claim for something and they're like, yeah, that's not due to your toxic exposure. And it's kind of like, I never said it was. So it's been sort of frustrating trying to work that out, but it sounds like you appealed it and did what you needed to do. They're going to give you the new exam, and I'm sorry for it because I know that is stressful. But I do recommend, try to go to the exams if you can, and just be patient. And there's definitely a connection. There almost always is there between those two conditions. So hopefully they'll get it right this time. Okay, this question is from Edward Craig. I have 90%, 50% back, 10 and 10 for neuropathy, and 70% for mental. Is there a way to prepare for the call? I hardly go out of the house, or should I go for P&T? Not sure what call. I'm assuming that you are filing for an increased rating, or let's see here. Yeah, I'm not sure what the call is for, but you can go for permanent and total, yes. And one thing to consider here is if you're not still working, you may want to look at unemployability based solely on the mental health. Because it's at 70%, that on its own could qualify for unemployability. And then your other conditions for the back and the neuropathy could be the 60% to get you to special monthly compensation S. Alternatively, it could work the other way around. If the back and the neuropathy is the reason you're not working, those are considered one condition for under the TDIU regulation, and the mental health 70% could be your other 60. So if you can get unemployability based on either the back or the mental health, you'd be set up for SMC-T. So that's what I would look at if you're not working at this point. If I'm not understanding your question, feel free to message us back. Okay, this question's from Tony. If my service treatment records show proof I was treated for disabilities I'm claiming, do I still need a diagnosis? Yes, you have to have it. And I don't know when you got out of service. So if you just got out and you were treating for it up until a couple of months ago, you do have a current diagnosis. But if you've been out for a few years and your service treatment records show that you had the problem in service, you still have to have two more elements. You have to have, for any kind of service connection condition, you have to have proof of an event in service, you have to have proof of a current condition, a current diagnosis, and then you have to have a nexus between them. So if you just got out, that's going to be pretty easy. You still have your current diagnosis, and obviously it started during service, so there you go. But if you've been out several years, you have to show that what you have now is what you had then, or that there's a relationship between the two. So you do, current diagnosis is an element of the claim. There's three elements: event in service, current diagnosis, and nexus. Okay, this question is from Mynitris Galloway. I received a 70% rating in March 2024, no payment, received, waiting, so I decided to apply TDIU and got a letter July 2025 for a DBQ exam, went to September 3rd. Today my rating is 60%. Will I get TDIU? So you got 70% rating and then applied for TDIU, and now you have a 60% rating. So I don't know if they reduced you. If you have 60% for a single condition, that is still enough to qualify for TDIU. So you might, if you're combining to get to the 60%, though, you're not going to meet the threshold regulation for TDIU. So you may need to appeal the reduction or whatever took you from 70 to 60 to try to get that back up. Now you can get TDIU with under the 60% for single or 70% combined, but it's just a lot harder. So if you can get your rating back up to 70, that's going to make it easier. Doctor and lawyer. Does Hill and Ponton take care of vocational rehab cases? I need help for being denied for having a degree. We do not. I'm not aware. I don't think anyone here is currently handling voc rehab cases, but definitely appeal that, because having a degree does not mean that you can work. So I would object to that. This question's from James Laufenberg. Is there a form for each letter of all the letters of SMC? I don't know what's the difference is for each SMC. Thank you. There's not a form. There is no specific form to request SMC, which is special monthly compensation. Aid and attendance has its own form. That's the 2680 form. The rest of them are just kind of, they should be inferred as a part of every claim, but you can just file any claim form. You can file the EZ form if you've never filed a claim for special monthly compensation before, and just ask for special monthly compensation, unless you know what it is that you're wanting. But there's not a specific form. You can just ask for it, unless it's aid and attendance, and then they're going to want that 2680 form. Okay, this one's from Jamie Gonzalez. Sleep apnea effective date isn't the same as other claims filed with it. Denied HLR. Should I go to the board? Kept my claim alive. Tinnitus and other conditions were claimed at the same time, but have 722. Huh. Is that? So I don't know why they're not giving, I mean, there may be a reason they're not giving you the same the same effective date. If they're all filed at the same time, in general, my rule would, I would expect them to all have the same effective date. The only thing I can think of is if maybe the sleep apnea was secondary to a condition that wasn't service connected at that time and was later service connected, then they won't take the sleep apnea all the way back to the date of the sleep apnea claim. They would only take it back to the date of the primary claim that the sleep apnea was service connected secondary to, if that makes sense. But yes, I would appeal that. John Jackson, do you have an office near the Rampart area of Los Angeles or anywhere here in Los Angeles? So we don't have anybody specifically working in Los Angeles currently, but our office does handle cases all over the country. So, we can almost always do everything over the phone. You wouldn't have to come into the office. So, feel free to give us a call. Andy Rooney, on average, how long does it take for VA to process VA Form 218940, Veterans Application for Increased Compensation based on unemployability, once it is submitted? If you're submitting that as on its own as a new claim, about the same as any other new claim. It's going to be 3 to 6 months, generally, for some kind of answer. Probably closer to 6, because they're going to want to. They're probably going to want CMP exams and things like that, and those do take time to schedule those. So I'd say you're probably looking at about 6 months, give or take. Okay, this question's from Kent Griever. HLR found duty to assist and new CMP exam was scheduled. Does the DRO send everything back to the original RO and original rater? So probably not. Could be, but anymore, we work on the VA works on a national work queue. And so they're trying to make sure that everything is handled as quickly as possible. So it could go back to that person, depending on, how things were left. But if they referred it out, it's not going to be in the HLR lane anymore. Once they find a duty to assist error, they move it to the supplemental claim lane. It's probably not going back to the original person. It's probably going to go to somebody else. Okay, this question is from Esteban Canales. Is it true cardiomyopathy is presumptive? I got diagnosed with it recently, but my cardiologist says I probably started developing it years ago. So it depends. Cardiomyopathy is considered ischemic heart disease typically. So if you were in Vietnam, or if you were in, if you're presumed to have been exposed to Agent Orange, for instance, then it is a presumptive condition. It really depends on, it's not presumptive for anyone who ever served in the service. You have to meet the qualifications for it to be presumptive. Okay, I think we have time for 2 more questions. Okay, this one is from B. Chand. Are there any updates on mental health ratings being updated? Thank you. No. So it's still, I haven't seen anything since the most recent proposed changes were made quite a while ago. And as far as I know, those are still on upcoming. I think I heard April of 2024 at one point, and obviously that didn't happen. I'm, you know, I don't know if I'm looking forward to that or not. We're being told that it will make it easier to get to 100%. I look at the regulations and I can see where that is possible. It is also possible it might make things worse. So I'm going to wait and see when they put them in, how they implement them. So, you know, I wouldn't wait for the new rating code to come out is what I'm saying. If you've got a claim or you're wanting to file a claim for increase, I'd say go ahead and do that. I wouldn't wait for the new rating schedule. We don't know when that's going to be, and we don't know exactly how it's going to look. We think we do, and we hope it's going to be good for veterans, but you know, we just don't know until we see how they implement it. Okay, and this is our last question. This is from Linda Jackson. U.S. Army veteran era at Vietnam era at 90%. Can I file for permanent and total due to unemployability, which was denied due to not able to provide employer's letter and contact information no longer in business? Yes, you can file for unemployability. You can get a vocational expert. Them not having your employer's letter should not be enough for them to deny you. So, you know, I would appeal that if you're still within the appeal period. But definitely, if you're at 90%, I'm guessing you're entitled to unemployability probably already. So I would either appeal or refile that. Can I also file a claim? Let's see. What's the rest of this question? Okay, I guess that's the end of the question. Yes, you can file a claim for unemployability. If you're at 90% already, like I said, I think that's probably you have a really good shot at getting to unemployability. So, you know, work around the employer's letter. If they're no longer in business, write a letter to VA and explain that. Explain, you know, what you've been doing since then, and you know, if you haven't been doing anything, that's evidence to support it. So, definitely file for that and fight for that. Okay, so I think we are done for today. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you for your service, and somebody will be back next week to answer your questions. Have a great day.